Aloha and welcome to another Cinema Club Verite, where we'll be talking with Erin Lau, who has been someone I've known for a long time. She used to be a old student of mine, but I wanted to talk a little bit about who she is and read off a little bit of her bio. She started her career working as a videographer and an editor for a Hawaiian grassroots news and documentary company. She later moved to LA after receiving a full ride merit scholarship from Chapman University, where she completed her MFA in directing. During her education, she was selected as a Sundance Native Lab fellow for her film The Moon in the Night, which was also workshopped at Ohina Labs, or Lab. And she later shifted her attention to the episodic content and participated in Powderkeg's Break the Room's writer room for Quibi show Last Resort when Quibi was around. And most recently, she was selected for Sundance Indigenous Intensive presented by WarnerMedia and a few other things which we'll talk about through the course of our conversation. But welcome, Erin.
Thank you. Aloha, everyone. It's always weird to hear my bio because it's like, oh yeah, that's a thing that happened. But I'm happy to be here and to talk story with you, Gerard.
Yeah, I mean, it's good to also catch up. You're doing really great things, and this is going to be a good time to sort of to catch up. So kind of what we like to talk about is we like to bring filmmakers in. We've had a few filmmakers from Sacramento and in the Bay Area, and now I have the connections in Hawaii, so we're always trying to talk about Hawaii and filmmaking, and not just from an indigenous perspective, but the unique voices that come from here, as well as filmmakers like yourself who have an indigenous voice who are elsewhere and making an impact. So I would like to start by saying, how did you start? How did you start this whole thing?
Yeah. I mean, funny story. I usually tell folks that. So I come from a music family. My father and a couple of my brothers are all wonderful slacky guitar musicians, and my dad has run a nonprofit for roughly 40 years. However, I can't play an instrument to save my life. So in the fourth grade, they're like, why don't you just film it and we'll perform and you take video. And I totally understand. I still can't play music to save my life, but I'm very grateful for it because it actually introduced me to the camera and editing. And I just started cutting things through middle school, and it gave me an outlet to process difficult experiences or just relationships, feelings, things that I just didn't know how to articulate in words. And I started to screen those films to the community in high school and realized, oh, a lot of what I was feeling, a lot of people could relate to or understood. And it just made me more aware of how much of this universality film allowed and to help you feel seen. And so I just kind of fell in love with it at like 16 and decided this was what I was going to do for the rest of my life. And luckily I'm still here.
Yeah. And, you started high school, right? And
yeah. That's when we met. You came to visit a class, and I think I was like 15 years old.
Yeah, and no, and that's why it's always awesome to see students, and when they just kind of like put their heads down and they're like, "This is what I'm gonna do," and they keep going and they don't stop. Obviously, I was able to see you all the way through college and see that trek, and so you never wavered and you just kept going for it, which was, I think, key. And I've seen students in high school all the time, and I see their journey, but it seems like you just never gave up, and that was what you wanted to do. So that was awesome to see.
Long-time workaholic.
Well, I think if you want to be a filmmaker full time, that's what it requires.
Yeah, yes, it is I like a quote I heard where somebody was saying it's not a job, it's a lifestyle, because it's all consuming, and I think that's very true.
Well, that sounds very similar to hula halau, and hula.
Mm,
So, they
yeah.
say hula is life. So, you could say, filmmaking is a lifestyle.
Yeah.
And it never stops. If you're not working on your own stuff, you are researching and looking at other work.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, with that being said, and talking about your journey and where you come from and where you're going, I mean, and this is probably not, the right word for it, but when was that big break of, you getting to a place where you're starting to get recognition or, you know, breaking out a little bit?
Mm.
I put big break, but big break in our terms is a little
I
different.
I also am just like, has that happened?
Yeah,
Like
and that's what I
I
mean.
I consistently feel like I haven't actually achieved that of like I because every time I think it has happened, I'm like, oh, okay, I can remember the first time I thought that was in high school because I was accepted in so Pacific Islanders and Communications did a summer camp with Fox for Indigenous filmmakers. And so I was flown to LA to stay at LMU and make these climate driven PSAs with other filmmakers for a week. And in my 18-year-old head, I was like, this is making it. And it wasn't, but I feel like that has just been consistent of when I got into the Sundance Lab for the first time, or when I got accepted into Chapman, or got my job at Jubilee, I consistently would hit this place of like, okay, is this it? Like this is like I've turned the corner and now it won't be so hard, which I understand is an incredibly naive thought, and it's always hard. But I, yeah, it's a tough question to answer because it just you kind of have to keep just finding the next break that keeps giving you momentum and kind of gets you the I don't know, I don't think I want to say buzz, but gets you the ability to get the next thing, if that makes sense, of like, okay, this accomplishment has got to me a meeting with this individual, so now I get to make this thing. And so it's kind of like a chain of mini breaks, I think.
Yeah, that's realistic.
Hmm.
And that's really how it works unless, you're doing I think there's never a point where you have that big break unless you're like Taika, you know.
Mm,
So, and that was an
yeah,
obvious big break.
yeah.
But I always thought, your big break was, Moon and Night.
Mm, that's
So,
fair. That's true. I think that's a good point. I guess I think of big break as like, that moment in a career that you never have to maybe worry as much. But that's a good point. The Moon of the Night was my most personal film and the biggest production. Still probably one of the bigger productions I've ever done. So I think that's a great pinpoint.
You said just a couple of fights to get us on our feet.
I know. But if you could have seen us out there, we were connected.
let's talk about Moon and Night and how did that start and how did that get made?
Yeah. I was I was attending Chapman for my master's at the time, and everybody has to do a thesis film in the directing program, and I didn't. All I knew is from the second I started attending that school, that I was going to do my thesis back in Hawaii. And it's funny because I work with a creative partner, Justin Amori, who's also from Hawaii, and we were just tossing ideas back and forth. and I made a joke about what if there's this chicken fight movie and da 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 da, which ended up sounding just like E.T. And I was like, okay, I just made the comedy chicken fighting E.T. pitch, and it was just a joke. But he actually responded saying, well, what if it was a drama, because that's really like your strength, and what if there's something here? And the more we talked about it, the more the Moon of the Night started to come into existence. But there was a lot of personal stuff that, even though I wasn't channeling it at first, it started to come to the surface. Things from my family, things from just like deep feelings that, again, going back to why I started filmmaking, I didn't really understand, that just started to show up in the work as we were developing that script. And sooner or later, the character and her father, Ahina and David, kind of were born. And I was fortunate enough, I applied for the Sundance Native Lab and was accepted. And so I got to work with them while working with Chapman on the thesis film. And it really wouldn't have been possible without them, because they helped with funding. And if you've seen the film, it's not a very simple film. It was expensive and complicated, with dogfighting sequences, a lot of locations, a lot of rain. The biggest crew that I've worked with to date. And so it was really a mix of my mentors at Chapman, the support and guidance of Sundance, that film came into existence.
Yeah, and I think we have some clips and some photos from it. For anyone that's watching, the full film is still online. I believe there's a YouTube link. So it seemed to get a lot of attention. And how did it help your career and your next moves?
Yeah, so once the film started playing festivals, it got into the student BAFTAs. We didn't get into the finalists, but on the sort of like panel of judges was Rob Carlson, who's an agent at UTA, and he loved the film so much that he reached out to me and he became my agent. And from there, eventually I got my managers, my lawyer, and we got to screen the film around. I kind of give it a bit of the credit for why I got my job. For 3 years, I worked at Jubilee Media, because the creative director really loved the film and felt like I was a good fit for the mission of the company. It went on to play Criterion. I mean, a lot of the meetings I've had with studios or production companies have been because of the Moon of the Night. I mean, it's kind of endless, the things. It's a lot of what I have to date is because of this film. It's a big part of it. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, and that's a little bit, what I was hinting at, and I think that's kind of like, short film is a good calling card, and that one was the one that kind of got your foot in the door. And
yeah, I should also add, you and Ohina Lab is the reason I have the ending I do.
Yeah,
we got a lot done, but the ending really found its footing because of the weekend I spent with you guys and your guys' support. So everybody go apply to Ohina Lab. It's open right now.
Yeah, that's right. That's a good plug. Yeah, got about a month left.
Subtle.
Yeah, I mean, you had an all-star group of filmmakers in that group.
Oh yeah,
with Joe Robert Cole,
mm-hmm.
who's working on Black Panther 2 right now.
Awesome.
Yeah, so your group had Alika, had Ty, Mitchell. So it was a pretty heavy-duty group of filmmakers.
Yeah. No, an all-star team for sure. Doing wonderful work.
Yeah, which we'll probably have on this, at some point too. But you talked a little bit about Jubilee, and the reason why I wanted to talk about Jubilee is that we also have a program that talks about diversity and some social issues. And I think your work at Jubilee was pretty cool in that it talked a little bit about those issues that we run into.
Yeah.
And so can you talk a little bit about that work you did there?
Yeah. A lot of the content Jubilee creates is focused pretty much like the keywords empathy, I haven't been there for a year, so I don't know if it's changed, but I'm certain it hasn't. But it was focused on empathy and bridging communities together, and sometimes communities in complete opposition with one another. And there was a lot of certainly lighter content with dating shows, but a lot of what was driving us was just bringing people together who might have different experiences, hard experiences, and a lot of a lot of the time I just got to spend time. I got to spend a lot of time talking to people I never would have even thought of. Like we're not. I think I've talked to flat earthers, astronauts, cultists, or folks who used to be in cults. I've talked to immigrants. I've talked to pro-wall individuals. It's the whole gambit. I've talked to kids about some of their hardest experiences they've been through. It really kind of opened my eyes to not only just all the pain that is out there, and even like the limits of my own ignorance or bias, but it also just opened my eyes to a lot of the joy and things we need to be working on, I guess, to say the least. That's the most eloquent way of putting it, but when you're spending hours upon hours of phone calls, I think I must have talked to several hundred people a year. In my time, I made about over 76 videos in those 3 years. Not all published, but it just exposed me to so many communities, but all community and empathy driven, to wrap it up in a nutshell.
Yeah, and it was like a full-time job of making films,
Yeah.
which is unique in this day and age sometimes.
Yeah. It was a wild, wild west, I would say. Digital is insane. It's a lot of throwing things at the wall and hoping it works.
Yeah, especially that, right?
Yeah.
So that takes us to All I Ever Wanted, and we have a clip, so we can show that first, and then we can talk about that one.
Cool.
Hi.
All I've ever wanted was someone who gets me. And that's you.
Do you trust me?
No.
Prom's tomorrow.
And?
And I don't have a date?
What if I don't want a Hugh Grant?
Day's not over yet, Julia Roberts.
All right, and this is pretty fresh, right? This is still on the festival circuit, so
Yeah, but playing right now in Indiana.
Indiana.
At the Indie Heartland Shorts Festival,
Yeah.
and a few more screenings coming up. But no, it is fresh off the presses.
Good, awesome. And let's talk about how this came to be, because this one and the next one is a little different.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, this film allowed me to show people that I can make things that are not just sad. My first rom-com. But the reason I got to make this film is because I was a part of a program at Film Independent called Project Involve, and they bring together kind of a cohort of people, cinematographers, producers, directors, who are in the industry but sort of looking for the next step, and essentially build crews out of that cohort. So there was 5 teams, and you pitched on the projects you wanted. And so I pitched on All I Ever Wanted, which was very different. I wanted to do something out of my normal wheelhouse. So I went after the 90s rom-com, which anybody who knows me is very much not my body of work. But it was a wonderful experience. And I have told a lot of students and emerging filmmakers, like Film Independent is a wonderful institution and should really apply to those programs, because this was a very special program.
Yeah, because it brought people you probably wouldn't never worked with, right?
Yeah, I didn't know anybody in my
Yeah.
program, but they're very good at vetting kind, hardworking, just wonderful people, mostly LA based. And so it kind of exposes you to a community of very talented creatives who kind of share a lot of your values and visions for the industry.
Yeah, and even the story is different than what you traditionally do. Not just it's a rom-com, but
Yeah.
usually it's indigenous perspective, right? So
Yeah, or at least in some way tied to Hawaii. So this was my first time, not my first time, but it's rare that I break away from that. And it was nice though, because I still got to be a part doing a story on the tied to the Asian American Pacific Islander community at least. But it kind of opened my eyes to like, oh, what other, I don't know, there was just so much joy in making it that it made me sort of want to stretch a bit more for the stories I'm telling connected to home.
yeah, and I think that's important probably for the next step, in the career, and that's what's going to happen, for paying work and paying gigs.
Yeah.
So it's good, and I believe it's also playing at Holly Shorts.
Yeah.
But where's it headed next?
It'll be Holly Shorts in August. We may or may not be coming home later in the year. I'm not allowed to say too much about that yet, but the only publicly announced one right now is Holly Shorts. There's a few that we're gonna announce soon, but I am on what is the word I'm looking for? I'm not allowed to say yet, but more to come.
All right, so it's gonna be able to be seen by people. It's the main thing.
There's a few more places it's coming up to, so we're excited.
Okay, awesome. So that takes us to Inheritance, which is another one that's kind of like fresh and out, well, soon to be out there, right?
Yeah.
Just played Tribeca, but the big thing is it was part of the inaugural class of Future Gold Film Fellowship.
Yeah.
And that was a partnership with Netflix and Tribeca that provided funding for the short film. Can you talk about a little bit about how that came to be? Or maybe we have a clip. We'll start with that, and then we'll talk a little bit about the process.
Yeah.
And it's a short clip, but it at least gets us some context, or what it looks like, and you can talk a little bit about what that fellowship was, and a little bit about that process.
Yeah, it's funny. One thing I'll say is after The Moon and the Night, I was like, okay, I made the dog fighting movie with a child and 10 locations and everything after. I'm just gonna simplify it. And here I am shooting a movie in lava fields with lava and another child. And I think I have forever committed to making my life difficult. But I got to make it because they actually invited a handful of filmmakers to sort of submit a pitch package, more or less, to this initiative, Future Gold Film Fellowship, which was Tribeca Studios was sort of the lead on it, but they were partnered with Netflix and Gold House, and they chose 3 filmmakers from the Asian American Pacific Islander community from nationwide. And this was based on script, budget, shooting schedule, the whole, everything had to come through. And to my shock, we got selected. And it was an amazing experience because we got feedback and sort of a little bit of mentoring from really established filmmakers like Anish Chagantri, who did Searching. I got reconnected with Destin, who did Shang-Chi. He talked to me, I think about a week out from shooting. He was giving me some advice. We got lots of notes in both development and post from Tribeca, Netflix, Gold House, and Janet Yang. And so there was a lot of support and plus funding to even make this possible. And we got to celebrate all 3 films together at Tribeca in June. And so I'm hoping they'll do it again. I don't know too much about what their plans are for the future, but it was very clear how much they were focused on empowering our community. And, you know, a lot of people talk, but I really felt supported, and that very genuine in how much they were pushing for that.
Yeah. It seemed like a great program, and a lot of people, you know, were applying, and, you know, and they even made an effort here in Hawaii to recruit. So it was great that you were part of that group of filmmakers.
Yeah. There were a lot of folks I talked to that they had reached out to. It felt like they were really pushing to try to get it as far as they could.
Yeah, you know, they had local filmmakers who were looking for people to submit, and there was some local connections in with your other films, right? Manette Louis was a producer on one of them, I believe. Manette Louis.
Yeah, she was on The Resemblance by Derek. I'm blanking on his last name right now, and it was crazy to see the range of films, but I wish I could have been on their set and seen her and Derek do their thing, but they made a really beautiful film.
Yeah, I saw all 3 of them, and I felt like they all, you know, were, well, actually I did not see all 3. There was one that was held out. I saw the 2. Yeah, no, I thought they were both great. I'm sure that their one will be great. And that, you know, that's a result of all the support and help.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Would not have gotten half of what we got done without them.
And it's awesome. It premiered at Tribeca. Any plans you could share about where it goes next on the festival circuit, or ways that people could watch it?
We're going pretty hard on the festival run. We're gonna get it. I have a lot of faith we'll be in a few places in the next year. Right now it's kind of like the waiting game. We've submitted all over the place, including to Hawaii International Film Festival, and my greatest hope is we'll get to bring it home and celebrate with our cast back there and our community of filmmakers, and yeah, fingers crossed.
Yeah, well, I think that's a sure thing.
I never want to hold my breath.
That's
many disappointments already.
No. Well, yeah, maybe we could talk about that. And I think people watching may not know that, you know, you can make a great film and you get a lot of buzz, but it doesn't get into every film festival.
Yeah.
And maybe you could talk about that process, which is it's not a gimme all the time.
Yeah. No, I mean, I feel like half this job is rejection, but it's, especially if you watch Inheritance, there, if you know me well, or really if you even just work in the arts or as a filmmaker, there's a little bit of like a familiarity there of like artists who feels belittled and like is starting to question, am I doing the right thing with my life? Am I doing right by my family? So there's a little bit of projection there, but and that's not surprising because I always try to work from a very honest place of where I am in my life. But it's just a part of it, and it's very hard not to take it personal. But I think if you're kind of considering, film festivals are building programs, and they're considering the whole ocean of films coming in, of like, okay, we've got 7 things dealing with romance, so now we'll have that program. And it's a lot of those like logistical planning involved, and it's not always about quality. Not to say they're gonna go and accept something they consider like very not up to par, but there's just a lot more decision making involved that it's not fair to you to take it too close, too personal to you or the film. And that goes for really everything in this industry, whether you're interviewing for jobs or after a directing assignment. There's just so many factors involved, and I think the more I find if I just kind of mass supply or like have a lot of pots being stirred at once, it's easier for me not to put all of myself on one thing of like, oh, this has to be the film, because sometimes those things won't work out. And if that crumbles, at least I know, okay, I've got like 3 other things moving or 3 other things I'm invested in, and sometimes they're not even films. And it just kind of, I think that kind of helps, to be blunt, with the sanity of your whole life isn't revolving around one thing. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's important advice for filmmakers.
Yeah.
Don't put all your eggs in one basket.
Yeah. Don't, or you'll burn out fast.
Yeah, I say that to a lot of people. I think it's important, if you want to be successful, to put things, a little bit of everything, have a lot of stuff going on, and because you never know what's going to hit. But even with the film festival thing, I think people get really bummed when they don't get into a film festival. But like you said, there's a lot of factors. It's not just the quality of the film.
Yep.
I think the one thing that we talk about on our end is it's sometimes they ask themselves, who's the audience? And sometimes, like the films that come from Hawaii, people are like, who's going to watch these films? We always try to argue we're going to bring our Hawaii crowd, but they haven't seen it until we go there and do it. So, there is a little bit of an effort, like when you get into a film festival, wherever it is, to just show up, be there, connect with those programmers and those communities, and just so it becomes easier for them to program these films.
Yeah.
It's
all such a slippery slope of, I understand that, but at the same time, you're like, you want to be true to who you are, and you want to empower the stories coming out of your community. And then we get into a place of accessibility, and like at the end of the day, I think nobody really has perfect answers to any of this stuff, and all you can do is stand by the stories you want to tell.
Yeah. And you've been part of great programs. Do you think there are more opportunities than there were before at this moment?
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like every few months I'm seeing, if I'm specifically focusing on like Asian American Pacific Islander, there's something. I think Janet Yang had a female like competition for that community back in the spring. That's still going on. I mean, there's our local ones like Ohina and Pacific Islanders of Communications Shorts Fund, but I'm drawing right now I think Netflix and HBO are having a emerging doc competition. Like, it feels like there's so many opportunities to apply to compete for, and I think that's a great thing, and I hope it sticks around. But it's not, especially when I talk to filmmakers before who have been around longer than me, have told me like it wasn't like this. There's, I hate to say it, like to some degree we suddenly got trendy, but and I don't like to think of us as a trend, but ultimately I think it is a good thing because people are paying attention, and hopefully they'll keep paying attention.
Yeah, and that's good. Good that there's opportunities, and I think it's not just for Asian American or Pacific Islander. I think just people of color right now have more opportunity.
Yeah,
and a lot of that is the result of people talking and getting people to do something about the lack of diversity in the industry.
Yeah, and making, I think also the folks who are making great work and putting out there and saying, just showing what we're capable of. I mean, I think, I'm just gonna I like to tease them, like Alika and Chris Yogi are just gonna ride their wave because they're showing the world how good stories from our home can be, and I'm so proud of them. But I just like to tease, like, okay, open the doors, guys.
Well, that's a little bit of the philosophy, right? Once you have the opportunity, you show people what you can do. You put your foot in the door and you keep it open for everyone else. And that's a little bit of our mantra, over here. So we think that way, which is, open the door just a little bit and give those opportunities to everyone.
Rising tides. Yeah.
Yes. And it is great to see, you succeeding, and Alika and everyone else, like you said, there is a wave that's coming out of Hawaii, and hopefully that continues. But what is next? Is there any plans other than promoting the films that you just finished?
That's always the big question. As much as like I already have like, oh, these are like 3 more shorts I want to make. I know I need to try to earnestly go after making features. And so me and Justin, who wrote Inheritance and co-wrote The Moon of the Night, are developing a couple of feature ideas and kind of taking pause from everything else to focus on those things. In the meanwhile, kind of keeping our ears to the ground for more opportunities, because features take some time to get made if they get made. And so in the meantime, I'm just going to keep trying to make work and building my portfolio. So hopefully more to come very soon, but we're going to try to look to the feature next.
Awesome. Well, that's a good place to end, because feature film is, we like to think is kind of like the next frontier from short film to feature film. That's how Alika did it. It's Chris too. So, it's probably your turn now.
Yeah, I should start making smarter decisions, because I love my shorts. I really love the short form, and I get it. I should I should go to the next level. So I'll go figure that out next. But no, it'll be good. I'm excited. It'll be nice to paint in that canvas.
Yeah, and I think you'll do quite well. I've said it before, like making a feature film is like stitching a bunch of short films together. So
I hope.
Well, that's just how you approach making it. It's not like the story is an anthology, but it's, you approach it like you're making a bunch of short films back to back. So, it's just telling one story as opposed to a collage of stories.
Yeah. I have a bad habit of making some long shorts, so hopefully it'll come a little naturally. But it'll.
Yeah, I used to say it all the time, and no one listens.
I think you've been telling me that since college, when I came out with Ko'ohana, like 18 minutes, and I was like, gotta go shorter, and the habit has stayed. I agree, short should be short.
Now I've told the same thing to Alika and everyone, and it's not like I'm just keep saying it. Yeah, it makes a difference how many times it plays.
Film festivals your chances are so much higher if you can get, frankly, under 10. It makes a huge difference. But I haven't succeeded at that, so I'm just gonna go longer and do the feature. And it'll definitely be tied to home, that I know. There's a few ideas we have that are very excited to hopefully manifest into something concrete.
Awesome. Yeah, I mean, the big thing, for anyone that's watching is that in the end, it's up to the filmmaker if it's long or not. Destin made a really long short film too. Alika made a really long short film when he started. But it does show you as a filmmaker. It may not go as far, but it may identify your voice as a filmmaker. And maybe that's what you want to do, before sometimes it's steps and figuring yourself out first. So, it's perfectly fine.
my what I always say is, what can you walk on a stage and own? Is that a film you can, film screenings are good, film festivals are good. At the end of the day, I need to be able to live with this for the next several years and know I did everything I believed in, and I didn't make a choice because somebody pressured me into that choice. And I think that's a good, in my personal opinion, a good way to look at the film work. It's like, can you walk on a stage in front of an audience and own that choice?
Yeah, and I got other good advice, which is be able to tell your story in a single sentence.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. Very good advice.
Because sometimes you'll want to tell this, and that, but if you could just simplify it in the short film world, it's very helpful on a film festival plan.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Even in it was actually a big part of when we were doing the Project Involved program at Film Independent, that every cut screening with the mentor was, what are you trying to say? Or what is the story in one sentence? And the second question would be, what do you want the audience to walk away with feeling wise at the end of your film? And I think those are really great North Stars for shorts, and I also would say even for features, when I watch a great feature.
Yeah, well, you have to pitch a lot for feature films, and you have to articulate the story is really quickly, because you'll be saying it over and over again. So and I think this is a good place to stop. But thanks for your time. Thanks Erin, for hopping on with us, and looking forward to see what comes next, and watching all your films. So
thank you. It's a pleasure. Thanks everybody, and keep making films.
Cool.